Good day guys, Austin here, and in this video today we're going to get the PlayStation 2 working on our computers. In fact, to be more specific, we're going to be focusing on the new release of the PCSX2, which at the time of me actually recording this video is version 1.4.0. So, we digress, let's actually get this set up and working on our computer. Now, let me focus first off on the word computer, because you do need a, well, I would say a fairly beefy PC. I'm not talking about full-on gaming rigs with, I don't know, crossfired 980s and all that kind of stuff. You just need a good CPU of some kind of standard. We're looking at, more than likely, per core, 2.5 gigahertz and over. That's just to get it working properly. Yes, you can go less than that, and if you turn everything down and you're playing the right kind of game, you may get lucky and get all the games that you require working no problem. But I'm not gonna lie to you guys, on some games you're gonna need a pretty beefy rig, even running vanilla, you know, native resolution, everything turned off, everything turned down, and even then you may have some hiccups along the way. It's just the way this emulator is. It's, you know, emulating a system which is very resource intensive in terms of power of CPU-age. So, you know, that's something that you're going to need. Doesn't matter about your GPU so much. It's all about the CPU on this one, guys. But yeah, here we go then. Without further ado, let's get stuck in and get this set up. Right, okay, what we're going to be doing today then is actually installing the program. Then what we're going to be doing is showing you how to play the game, and then we're going to be taking it at one stage further, as in how to configure the game. And then if we've got time at the end, what I'm going to show you is how to actually update your emulator each time to the most current build. In some cases not the most stable, in some cases not even the most performance from that build, but the most common build, so you can update as your own pleasure. So you're not actually waiting for the new stable releases all the time. You can keep this actually current to the most current version, if that makes any sense. But again, we digress. We'll get into that in more detail as we go along. So first things first then, go into the description down below. Within the description you will see a link, more than likely to a mega site. It will be named PCSX2 fix files. I wish for you to download those files to your computer. Once it's done, you will find that they are more than likely going to be in a compressed state. Decompress, uncompress. Use the 7-zip program, because I would have used 7-zip to actually compress those files. So once it's uncompressed, decompressed, extracted, or whatever it is you want to call that, you'll end up with a folder similar to this. Leave it as it is for the time being. This will come into usage in just a few minutes. Okay, next thing we want to do is focus on the actual emulator itself. So again, in the link down below, I'll give you a link to the official website, which is the PCSX2 website. Once you get there, you'll be greeted with something looking like this. Obviously the news may have changed by then, the yearly report might have changed and all that kind of good stuff, but on there is all kinds of links to all kinds of good bountiful knowledge that may aid you in your PCSX2 progression and get you set up even more. You may even learn something, God knows. But I will say that this website, I don't know who looks after it, but a lot of it is outdated, so be careful about what you read and what you take as gospel, because some of it may be very outdated, again, as we'll see in a short while. But what we want to focus on for now is the actual download. So take yourself to the tab here, which is download. You'll see releases and development. Development is obviously the most current version, but that is in the GitHub format. We'll go along that again, like I said, at the end of the video. What we want is a stable release. So for us, we're looking at the Windows one, so click on the Windows. You'll load up a section of the website looking just like this. Now again, the version may have progressed. It may be a more recent version than what you can see before you right now. So as you can see, I've got the 1.4 version. Now, as you can see again, I've got 1.4 in two different versions of the same emulator. What the hell's going on? Well, let me tell you. The first one is the standalone one, and the second one is the binary. The standalone installer actually installs not just the emulator, but everything included to be run on your computer. So all its requirements, all its drivers, redistributable files, DirectX and all that kind of stuff, it's all included along with the actual emulator. If you was to download this one, it will just come with the emulator itself, so your computer may be missing certain things that it needs in order for it to run. So to be on the safe side, I would go to the standalone installer, click download. It will go to wherever your downloads go, and then you can start installing it. But for now, don't get tempted. We're going to download one more thing to go along with it. Okay, take yourself to the CPU ID website. Again, description down below, there's a link to this website. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this program, which is probably 2 out of a billion people, this is basically a program that gives you advanced information about the kind of hardware and, well, resources that your computer has. So it gives you kind of a more technical version of what's actually in your system tray, or in your system description when you go into the Windows description. So I would download this, basically the setup English, or setup whatever it is, Chinese if you're Chinese, I don't know guys. I don't know if there's any Chinese people out there reading or following my guides. If there is, give me a shout. I love Chinese people. Anyway, where did that come from? Yeah, go to the download custom, but if you wish also. Now these are the exact same program, but they are themed. Again, let me emphasize that they are only themed in different ways. So I've got an MSI motherboard, so I have actually downloaded the MSI version of this. It's got no difference whatsoever. It doesn't play better on an MSI. The program doesn't do anything different because it's themed. It is literally just the aesthetics of the program itself which is different. So yeah, mine, when I launch mine, may look a little different from yours. Okay, let's actually get this set up and start the ball rolling then. We've now got everything that we need and all our downloads are done. What you need to do first off then is install obviously the CPU ID, the program that you just downloaded. It's a simple installation. I'm not going to tell you how to suck eggs, just install it wherever it is that you want to put it, or wherever it tells you to put it. It's a very good program, as we'll see in a short while. Once you've done that then, you need to install the actual PCSX2 emulator, because I told you to put that off for a second. Now is time to actually do that, guys. So click on it. First screen that will probably come up is asking you to tick a few boxes to install all the various different things it requires. Obviously the two main ones, well in fact 3 main ones, is the emulator itself, which I believe is normally grayed out. Normally grayed out. And the other 2 important ones is the DirectX, whatever it is it's asking for, and the, what else is it asking for? Oh yeah, the Visual C++ install files. Make sure those are ticked. The other ones are just I believe it's just a desktop shortcut and something else. You don't need to obviously do those at your own free will, guys. I'll let you decide that one. Right, so once that's done, it'll go through the next stage. Then you can select where you want to install it. You can install it in the default location. However, I like to put mine in various different locations. If it's going to be one that I'm going to be working on and keeping for good, then I put it in my emulators folder to go along with the other, probably hundreds of up to now, emulators that I use and install on my system. But for the benefits of this, I've installed it in another location, which is why I'm not taking you through the actual install of it. It's already done. It's not rocket science, just installing it. Choose your location, put it whatever you want. Right, once that's done, you will end up with, let me get to it, this PC, I believe I could put it in the SSD, PCSX2 1.4.0, here we are. Right, this is the actual file that you probably end up with. Now there are some probably extra ones involved in this. You will get those extra ones just now. Don't worry guys, don't worry if it's not identical. What you want to do is go to the first download that I'd asked you to get, the PCSX2 fix files. Open that up because it's covering my previous ones. Select everything, drag it over, let them mingle, let them rejoice at each other's company. Press replace, press overwrite, press whatever it says, but let them join, let them become one, because they play well together. get rid of the extra one, and there we go. That is now everything in place, ready for us to rumble. First off then, what we need to do is give this maximum compatibility with our system. Right click on the application file or the executable file. Click on properties, go to compatibility. Down here at the bottom, one of them will be run this program as administrator. Depending on what kind of Windows you're running, you may have this in the various other places. I can't tell because I haven't got your computer, guys. But one of the options somewhere on that computer will be to run this program as an administrator. You want to do that. So at that point, you would tick the X button. Once that's done, apply will be fully enabled. Click apply, click OK, and that means that whenever this program runs from this day forth, it will always be an administrator enabled program. Okay, let's actually now run this program. Hopefully this will give me my first time installation, the same as what hopefully you guys will have. So this computer is new, I've just put it together, so I've not configured this in any way whatsoever, especially in terms of hardware, as you will see in a short while. Okay. First time configuration menu pops up just as like this. Right, excuse give it our first time configuration then. First off, select your language. I'm going to go for default because that's English. Click apply. Okay. Welcome to the PCSX2 exclamation mark. This wizard will help you through the guide, blah blah, whatever. Basically, if you click on this, it will take you to the outdated configuration guide and video. 1.2.1. That's how relevant this one is. Obviously it's been updated. A lot of the information is still very much relevant, especially if you're going to read any part of this website. Read this part here where it starts talking about the CPUs and the different types of architecture or information, or the way it utilizes its CPU information. Okay. We'll go into more detail on this, but for now, if you get spare 5 minutes or a few hours, judging by the length of this block of information, have a good read. It does help. Okay. We don't need that for now though, because we're actually installing everything. What you can do at this stage is click next, because as we are configuring the actual emulator itself, there are little hints and tips which pop up as we're going along. Blah blah blah. Do you want to? Yes, import. Whatever. Right, at this stage, everything should, if you haven't already had this installed on your computer, be vanilla. Mine is not that vanilla at the moment because I've already had this installed on this computer at this moment. Well, not at this moment, but it has been on this computer before. So it may vary slightly depending on what your configuration is. What you want to do is keep everything as vanilla as possible. Emulator itself works on a plugin based system, so the emulator isn't just one emulator that incorporates all the information and runs itself. What it is the emulator actually takes on board different plugins, different types of programs. It brings them on board and it utilizes all of them together. So it's not just a case of making a new emulator, you can also make new plugins. It gets kind of complicated, which is its upside and its downside, because obviously some plugins are updated, some are not, some are more compatible with others, and that's where this emulator starts to get a bit freaky, and that's where we're going to have to go through the actual configuration of everything in more detail as we go along. But for now, what I want to do is get everything as vanilla as possible so we can actually just get a game working. All this kind of stuff. Basically the top one's your graphics, next one is your controller pad. You want to be choosing the lily pad at this point. Go into configure. Keep everything, unless you've actually been fiddling with this beforehand on another version of the emulator or even on this emulator, keep everything as vanilla as possible. Turn my control pad on. Would help. Then what you need to do is go into the pad. What I would do if this is your first install is click on clear all, then go and click on each one of these and give them the button which is relevant to what you want to have on your joypad. It's a long and tedious process. Most of these is actually set up for an Xbox 360 pad as default. However, I've noticed that the sticks can have issues unless you configure those. I'm not going to go into too much detail because all I want to do from this video is actually get this up and running. I've got mine set up properly in another location, so we don't have to go through too much detail. But obviously in your case, go through it in detail. Saves you going around messing around later on. Down here in the bottom corner, you can actually use your motors if you've got vibration on whatever controller you're working. I cannot guarantee that they would work with every controller, guys. Don't ever go at me if your controller isn't working. I've been told that this definitely works on a 360 because I'm using a 360 now, and I'm also told that it works on a PS3 and a PS4 controller. Obviously, as long as your computer is already set up for those controllers beforehand. Anyway, there we go. Set up your big motors, your little motors. Once you've done all your controls, then click apply. I would then go through to the pad 2 again. You can also link up, I think it's up to 4 controllers depending on what kind of plugins you enable and all that kind of stuff, but that's more advanced. So at this point I would just focus, if not on 1, but on 2. Click OK, and that's your control setup. All the rest of the stuff then keep as default. More than likely you've got gigahertz already chosen there. You've only got one option here, and I don't think you've got anything to choose from around these ones either. Right, the next one, and probably the main one that we need to be configuring at this point, is the top one here, configure. And as you can see, it will open up something similar to this window. Now, depending on the limitations of your actual hardware in your system will dictate what kind of options you've got available to you now. So please bear with me while I go through the different options and try to explain them in some kind of logical detail which will be attainable to you guys. First one then, adapter. Basically what this is asking for is what you want to use for your hardware GPUage to run this emulator. So I've got a standalone graphics card, which is I believe, what is it? It's a 670 in this computer. I don't even know what I've got installed in this computer. The renderer itself. Okay, what you want to be going for here is normally your GPU. So depending on what kind of GPU you've got installed on your computer will dictate what kind of options you've got available to you now. If you've got a dedicated card and a modern-ish one, you will more than likely have DirectX 3D11 hardware as an option in this drop-down list. If you've got 12, you will also have that in there more than likely. If you've got a dated one, then you would probably have 3D9 hardware also available there. If you haven't got a dedicated graphics card, or if your graphics doesn't support it, you may only have the OpenGL option here. Now, I would choose hardware out of all of these different options, and I would work down in the way I've just said it. So whatever the highest DirectX 3D version is, I would choose that. In my case, it's going to be 11. If you haven't got that, go down to 9. If you haven't got that, GL. Just for the purpose of this initial install. Again, we will go into actually configuring this for your system, because various different systems perform better using various different settings. So please bear with me while I go through this. But for this scenario, I'm going to enable 3D11. Okay, interlacing. I'm going to keep that as normal. Internal resolution. It may be set to 2 on yours. Turn it to native. That basically means that it's the lowest setting. It's the resolution that was used in the actual PlayStation 2, which I believe is something like 440 or something. It's very low, and it will be very blocky, especially on modern TVs blown up to that size. But it will be the most stable version on this emulator. Okay, next one then, we've got texture filtering. Depending also on what you could enable here, will also enable the kind of settings that you're going to be seeing in this section here. What you want to do is keep them as default, as vanilla, as low as possible at this point to make it more compatible with your system. Once we've got a game loaded, then we can start tweaking and pumping up various settings to get, first off, the best performance, and secondly, the best visuals that you want on your system. So what I want to do then here is go on bilinear PS2, anistoric filtering, whether it is off, CRC hack level. Depending on what kind of settings you put on here will affect the kind of settings that you want to be putting here. I normally run this on aggressive. However, it says full is the safest version. But I know that on my system I run on aggressive and that works better. However, I often then switch to OpenGL, which is obviously here, and I would change here, and then I would change to that setting. So it starts getting complicated. But for this scenario, I know this runs on aggressive best for me. But for you, I would put full or the safest or the most vanilla version that it says. Obviously, don't put minimum and don't put none because, well, you won't get any kind of speed up whatsoever for yours. Hardware hacks, yeah, I'm going to keep that ticked, but I'm not actually going to enable any, so I'm going to take all these off for now. This will come into more, it'll make more sense later on when we start doing things. Okay, and the rest of this is shaded out. It won't let me play with anything because that's only if you're in software mode, which we don't really want to play with because that's more intensive on our systems. I mean, this emulator is intensive as it is. We don't really want to be messing around and making it even more intensive. However, some games, we digress, some games will only work in software mode. So again, you know, these are the kind of hoops we got to jump through for this emulator. Shader configuration then. Configure. What you want to do is make sure nothing's enabled on this whatsoever. The only one that I like to put is enable shader boost, and this is so much a boost in performance. This is a boost in terms of actual visualization. So what I like to do is, all these would normally be set to 50. I like to put mine to 60. This doesn't do anything in terms of actual emulator. What this does is actually, it's like me turning the color up on the TV or the saturation up on the TV. It doesn't, you know, make any impact in terms of emulation. It just looks better on my TV. That's why I've done that. Okay, so that's that bit. Alright, that is that now all set up. That is our emulator set up in the most vanilla way possible. So now I click on OK. Now when I click down here at the bottom, it'll probably ask me, do I want to put in the BIOS? In fact, yes, it does. Now what we need to do is tell the emulator where the BIOS file is. Now, people are very much mistaken, especially when they're doing these tutorials and stuff and guides online. First off, it doesn't matter the region of your BIOS. The emulator does not read the BIOS. As long as you've got the emulator set to fast startup, which we'll go into in detail in a second, the emulator doesn't need to be region specific to whatever game you're playing. It doesn't make any difference. Now, the most stable version of the actual BIOS isn't the most recent one, which everyone always picks, which I think is like 2006. No, it's not, because many of the older games don't work like that. The most stable version that will get most games working is actually one of the oldest versions that was released in Japan. So, yeah, ignore everything that they're saying. Right, the way we do this then is go to this little tick box here. Use default settings. No, we don't want to do that because it's looking in a random folder. What we want to do is tell it to whatever we've just installed our emulator. So in my case it's this PC. What are we looking at here? We'll go for the SSD, I believe I put it in. Yeah, we put it in PCSX2 1.4 again, and there we go, the BIOS folder. Again, this is wherever you've installed your emulator. And as you can see, it doesn't actually show you the BIOS file within it, but it is within here. All you need to do is press select folder, and it will come in the list at the top here. Boom, boom, boom. Shake the room. Okay, so as you can see, I'm using the Japanese BIOS for this. Crazy. Even though I'm not going to be playing, well, I do play Japanese games, but in this scenario, it's going to play everything. Okay, so once that's done then, and that is selected, click finish. And that is it. Depending on what kind of system you've got, your hard drive, your system and all that kind of stuff, it will then write a config file specific to all the selections that you just made. So in future, whenever you launch this emulator, it will remember all the settings that you've just put in. So although we have just spent probably far too long me waffling about all the settings we've just done, you won't have to do that ever again. However, once we start playing our games, then I'm going to show you how to tweak various settings to, again, get the performance up to maximum and get the visualizations up to maximum. Right, well, let's actually do what we came here to do, which is to play the games. Right, first off, before we get stuck in, because I forgot to mention it during the setup, what I want you to do is to go to your config, go to your plugin and BIOS selector. Now this will open up showing us the same kind of visualizations and same kind of setup that we were just looking at, where you could choose your plugins down the list like we could before, but also on the left hand side here in this pane you can actually change the BIOS and folders, something which is only accessible during this menu, but we don't really need it, to be honest. We're mostly interested in this, which is the plugin side of it all. Right, before we begin I need to make sure that we are singing off the same hymn sheet. Now these we'll go into in a second, but basically it is different kind of how to put it in layman's terms, different kinds of languages which is passed through your CPU, and some CPUs can cope with the languages more than others and some cannot cope at all. So what I want you to do is set it to the most default level, which is SSE2. So in the menu click that. Now all the rest of the settings should have saved, so you don't need to worry about any of that kind of stuff. So now we can finally go in and actually set up our games. Right, talking about games then. My games come in ISO format. It's the most common one used. However, you can get them in various other ones using the, I can't remember it, GRX or GRZ or something, which is basically a compressed-ish version of a full ISO. Again, we'll cover that probably in later topics. Or they can come in the ISO, which I just stated, and I think they can come in like BinQ or any other basic disk image format. This emulator can also use actual physical copies of your PlayStation 2 games also. So if you've got any original PlayStation 2 or copies of them, or backups should I say, of your original PlayStation 2 games, it can also use those. Obviously, of course, as long as your CD reader or DVD reader that is on your computer can actually read those type of discs that you're using. But anyway, let's actually get stuck in, because most of you are going to play them off your backups. Now, on mine, let's have a look. This is a basic new computer I put together for this tuition, to be honest, so I've got no idea what's installed on it or where anything is, but we'll try the ROMs, drive, PlayStation 2, and it seems that on this computer I possess 1381. Now, because I use a front end, my front end will decompress or uncompress or extract all these compressed files, because basically all these 1881 DVD images in essence will take up quite a lot of information. So to get around that, I've compressed them all to make them a lot smaller. However, this emulator cannot read this, so what I need to do is decompress, extract, whatever it is, to actually get them to run. So to save some time, I actually did that in my little folder here. So there you go. These are my test subjects for today's lesson. Right, so let's actually get stuck in and play these games then. How exciting is this? We're actually going to play some games finally. Right, first off then, the CD DVD thing that's up here. What we need to do first of all is load a game. As you can see at the moment, it must have been running off default and it's loaded up Shadow of Colossus. What I want to run is something that's let's play Rogue Galaxy, because I believe that this one isn't that much of a system hog, so I can show you this one running properly. Well, I can show you booting anyway. Then we're going to go into system, and then what we're going to choose is boot CD DVD fast. It's basically what the CD DVD option was to actually choose it, is to put it theoretically in the hypothetical DVD drive. Then going into system, what we're going to do, booting it fast, is skip the actual boot sequence, so it doesn't need to be in the correct region, and go straight into the game. How exciting is this? So I'm clicking it now, and we should be greeted, hopefully, if everything's worked out correctly, with a game. Come on, you got this! Now, various games have various different things going on with them and various different settings, as we'll go on to in a short while. However, if you are just after playing a game, in other words, you've just got a selection of a couple of games that you enjoy playing on the PlayStation 2, then basically, if it works at this point, what's the point in changing? You know, don't try and fix something that isn't broken. You've got it all configured, it's working the way you want it. If that's the case, then you could probably end this tutorial here. There's no need to go any stage further. However, if you're loading a game and things start to get, I don't know, slow, emulation isn't proper, if you want to start heightening the graphics and things like that, then please follow my lead. We're going to improve it. So as you can see, I've got the game to load. Let's actually stretch this out a little bit, see if we can get the screen getting any bigger. Now, what I want to point out to you is, first off, we've got various things going on at the top of the screen. We've got slot, we've got speed, in the brackets here we've got frames per second. This little bunch of values here is the most important one for us to get configured with this game. Just to note also, I've turned the sound down for this emulator. If there's any music or anything like that, then YouTube's going to start kicking off about it and the video will probably get taken down. So I've muted this emulator. It does run sound, guys. Right, back onto track. Speed here. The speed is relevant to the game that would be played. So 100% means that it's running 100% speed of what its intentional play is. The one next to it is the frames per second. This emulator is set up so that PAL, I believe, runs at 59 frames per second, and US games run at 60, along with JAPs, I believe, as well. But, you know, don't quote me on that one. So what we need here, in ideal situation, is what we've got now, which basically is speed at 100% and the actual frames per second running at 60 to 59. Now this means that the game's running good, to be honest. Everything's hunky-dory, the world's all good, and we can get on with it. But that's because this game is either in a sequence right now, or it's not really doing anything on the screen to tax the actual emulator itself. When we start to bring in various games, however, then we start to have some problems. Now I'm just going to skip through these menus. I don't think this is a very taxing game, to be honest. I don't think we'll have anything... too much difficulties anyway. No, it's going to stay at the same speed, which is good. And like I said, if you are happy with this kind of thing going on, then what's the point in changing, guys? Right, so what I'm going to do now is quit out of this game. I proved that the actual emulator works. I know and I am happy that everything is set up and configured. The problem is that they're not configured that specific to my system. So when I then go to load something else, let's say for example Shadow of Colossus, which is a beast of a system hog through this emulator, then we're going to see more than likely some system slowdowns, and that's when we can start configuring this properly. Okay, so first off then, let's actually load the Shadow of Colossus. Yes, swap the disk, and then what I want to do now is a full reboot. Yes. So basically what I've done is I've put the Shadow of Colossus image into the theoretical drive. I've now booted it again, and hopefully it'll go straight into this game. Again, it's muted, so don't think about the stuff in the background. Got my control pad on. Now, as you can see, this is a beast of an emulator. Sorry, this is a beast of a game, and the speed is dropping down on my, on my emulator. Now this is run native everything, you know, this is like running at 512 by 448. That's nothing, that is tiny. That is the original screen size of the actual PlayStation 2. So things ain't looking too good. As you can see, I've got quite a strain going on with my stuff at the moment, so what we need to do is stop this bottleneck going on, because that's the main draw that we've got from this emulator. It bottlenecks. It's not anything to do with your beastly PC or anything. What you've got to do is actually set it up to work better with your PC. So that's when we start going into the options. Right, first off, what I want to do is get to a part of the game where I can actually get some kind of stable environment going on. So I'll quickly start a game. Come on. This is going to be a beast of a video for you guys. And, well, I'm not going to apologize because, you know, I could just show you how to get the games running, but what I'm doing is actually telling you how to get the games running properly across the board. Because, yes, you will more than likely, with the setup that we got going on now, be able to play the majority of your games. However, as you can see, when you start to put certain games in, they will not perform very well. And this is where you start to think, oh, well, your system's either shit, or it means that, I don't know, you've not configured it properly, and you don't know what to do. You can't get any further. So what I'm going to show you now is how to get them working properly on your PC. Something that normally isn't done that often. Okay, so skip these scenes. We don't really need it. I remember at the beginning of this game, you could go out into the field, and that's where I believe we're going to have the biggest slowdowns. So during in here, I've got what, 82, 84%. I'm running kind of top speed, but it's noticeable. I've got noticeable lag going on. It's quite smooth though, I must admit. But what I want to do is get this running smooth as butter across the board on all my games. This PC isn't exactly cream of the crop. It's no amazing gaming rig. I'll show you the stats in a second. But it should be holding this emulator no problem whatsoever. So let's actually configure it to, well, how it should be. Right, so I'm out in the field. Now what I can do is hopefully slow the horse down. Come on. Come on, geezer. Now, as you can see, as I rotate around the camera, the speed at the top and the frame rate gets a lot quicker over here because there's not much in the environment. If I was to slow this right down and point it at the quite detailed castle, or whatever you would call that in the background, then as you can see the speed and the frame rate is dropped quite considerably. So I know that this is taxing and hogging my system right now. So what I want to use this is kind of as a base layer. I know that at this point I'm taxing the hell out of this emulator and my system. So what I want to do now is try and get it so this system runs this bit smoothly, so that I know when I go into future games I'll have no worries. They'll always work 100%. So here we go then, guys. Right, first off then, let's go to our config and let's pull up what in fact, we can use these ones here, which is the same as the plugin and BIOS selector, but we're skipping the big menu and we're going straight into, say, the video settings, the audio settings, the controllers and all that kind of stuff. So what I want to do first off is go for the main one that we're going to be messing around with, which is the video plugin. Okay, so I want to be able to see the screen above. I'm not too bothered about what goes on the actual screen at this moment in time. I just want to focus on the speed and the frames per second. So we set it as DirectX 11 hardware. Some people might get more joy if they've got a weak graphics card or an onboard graphics card which isn't really handling it very well. It may be worth going on to OpenGL hardware. That could be a very good option. That would probably give you bigger speed ups and all that kind of stuff. What I want to do now is, well, let's see if we can get any speed ups going on. So we'll do we'll see if OpenGL will give me any benefits running it that way. So I've got 43% at this moment. As you can see, starting again, 44. Now, I've got virtually no difference in speed whatsoever, changing from hardware to OpenGL. So, go back in, plug in settings. Change into nearest. That make any difference? No, if anything there, I've got to slow down. Right, so video-wise, I'm kind of there's not much I can do other than if I put the internal resolution up, it's going to slow it down even more. If I mess around with the hacks, I'm more than likely going to start messing around. However, what I can do, just forgot about, is basically on the hacks, because I've got OpenGL enabled at the top here as my render. If I try OpenGL with the partial CRC hack level set, let's see what it actually gives me any boost at all. No. So no, I'm not getting any improvement there whatsoever. So what I'm going to do now is drop this down back to DirectX 11. I'm going to go back to bilinear. I'm going to drop this to aggressive because I seem to be getting big speed ups from that. That's about it really, which has basically brought me back to the default. You guys might be noticing something completely different on your set, but this is the kind of thing that we got to go through. As you can see, I've barely gained anything whatsoever just going back to the default one. However, this is where we can start getting a little bit more technical. If we go into the emulation settings here, it opens up a completely new window. Now, this is where people get fooled when they're going through their settings, and where people they get false positives, let's say, because I can put hacks on at this moment in time, which basically fools the emulator into skipping frames, pretending we've got various different things going on, and in other words, well, I'll show you in just a second. What I want to do is speed hacks. Now, you see in the bottom right hand corner here, MTVU, multi-thread micro VU1. Basically, good speed hack comparison may cause hanging. If you've got 3 or more cores, in other words, if you're not on a dual core processor and you're on an i5, you're on an i7, you've got an AMD or something like that, then what you can do is tick this. It may give you speed up, it may not. However, some games may not work completely with this. So what I'm going to do is actually tick this. Now, watch, let's see if this makes an impact on what's going on right now. So I'm going to click apply. Now, as you can see, I've got virtually a slowdown rather than a speed up by doing that. However, I'm on an 8-core processor at this moment in time, so obviously that's kind of, not made sense to me whatsoever. However, there is so many different variables that you have to tamper with on this to get it working up to full speed. So again, usually when you're watching the videos or guides and things like this, you were just going to get told to tick that box. However, it doesn't work like that, because as you can see, we've got slowdown coming on. So what I want to do now is another little test, and I want to start basically turning this predefined presets up. Now what the presets are basically various different tick boxes, altercations with various different settings all the way through this menu. So in various parts that you can see here, you will have certain things ticked as standard. When you start applying the speed hacks, this will start altering some of those settings. So I've just turned it up from, I think it was safe, or safest, to balanced, which is the next one up. Click apply. Let's see if that has any boost on me. So as you can see, we're now starting to get a bit of a boost going on here at the top of the screen, which is a good thing. However, again guys, this is proving to be fruitful for me, but it could have detrimental effects for you guys, and it could actually be harming your computer by doing it too high. I know I'm safe because I know what I've built and I know what my settings should be to make this work properly. But again, it's trial and error. Let's see how it goes for you. So that worked good for me. What happens if I take it one stage further and go aggressive on this? I've gone to 100% and I've gone 59 frames per second. Now, this is where you may start thinking, well, hang on a minute, I've managed to do this no problem whatsoever. Now, if you've got a lower end PC than me, or one that's not as compatible with this emulator, let's say, although these readings at the top are giving me 100% with 59 frames per second, the most taxing part of this game, or one of them should I say, it might be good. On paper it looks amazing. However, when we're actually going into the game itself and I start to move the camera, change positions, you will notice, maybe not at this point because it's still on native resolution, that you may skip frames, because that's what one of the hacks is. You skip frames per second. So although the emulator is bringing it to the screen at 60 frames per second, it's actually not processing those frames for you and giving them to you. So when you start to get into intensive games and things start moving, things start kicking off, and you would normally get a hell of a lot of slowdown, instead of dropping the frames per second, what it's actually doing is processing less frames per second, but still giving you those frames visually. Does that make sense? Am I just waffling on here for no reason? It's hard to explain. But you will notice that although on paper it's actually giving you those readings, you're not actually gaming with those readings. So you do have to be careful. You are cheating yourself sometimes by putting these cheats on. And if your system cannot handle it, then although it may look like it is on paper, when you're actually gaming, you are not. And that's why it was so important to get those settings absolutely to the maximum before we started messing around with the hacks, because although the hacks do make it seem like the games are emulating quite smoothly, visually they are not, and you will end up with, well, broken games, broken artifacts, huge knock-on effects further down the line when you start playing on more fussy games and more CPU intensive games. So yeah, you know, you've got to get these settings one stage at a time. This emulator is a pain in the ass, and it's not something you just jump into and start emulating, unless you just want to play a couple of games. I mean, at the end of the day, if you've only got a couple, you've not got that much to do. But people like me, people who are in the scene, and people who want to build up their collections, then yes, you do have to do a lot more tweaking to get the collection working, to get the collection looking the way you want it, and to get the maximum performance out of the game. When we then start looking at, you know, lower end CPUs and ones that aren't that good, yes, you're still gonna get 100% gameplay. Yes, you're still gonna get 60 frames per second. But when you start playing games such as Gran Turismo, Shadow Colossus, and things like that, your graphics are gonna look like dog shit. Trust me. And that's the way this emulator is. You know, you can fool yourself and you can fool your computer, but you can't fool your mates when they come round and they try playing on your games and they look like dog shit. Anyway, there we go. We've got this working to its optimum right now. There are certain other features, certain other tweaks that we can now look at. Okay then, so now we've got our emulator set up, it's completely configured, and now we've got our game set up and working to our computer the best we can, to be honest. Now what we can do is start to ramp everything up so we get the best kinds of visualizations that we could have, to be honest. Now, please, if you've got any kind of, if you were struggling on the last stage, then this bit probably won't give you, well, not much scope to maneuver anyway. One of the tweaks that we can make, and one of the reasons why I asked you to download the extra program, is to change our instruction type. So to go into more detail on that, load up the CPU ID program that I asked you to install at the beginning of this video. Okay, here you'll be greeted with, yours may look different to this. I downloaded the MSI version due to my MSI motherboard. It's completely in terms of visuals, it doesn't make any difference. However, as you can see, this gives you complete information about what kind of system you are running in quite a lot of detail, to be honest. So as you can see, I'm running the AMD FX 8350. It's the new Viscera core one. So basically it's running 8 cores, I believe it's running 4.2 gigahertz, and it's completely stock. I've not done anything to this. This is a build that I just put together the other day for this example of me making this video. So this isn't my normal computer. This is quite a Frankenstein one, more than likely. I can't remember what I put in here. What have I got? The 970 MSI gaming board, which isn't too bad, to be honest. I got 32 gigs of RAM, which is quite overkill, but why not, eh? Graphics, I've got well, for some reason I've got a 670 NVIDIA, and that's got 2 gigs of RAM. So yeah, it's not bad. However, the main one that I made you download this program for is for this bit here, where it says instructions. Now, to put it into layman's terms, my apologies if you are technologically more advanced than this, but to put it into layman's terms, instructions are the kind of ways that your CPU can interpret different languages, different instructions from whatever programs, operating systems, and all that kind of good stuff. It interprets the information and can utilize them in different ways. Obviously, technology advances and they come up with new ways to interpret information. However, the CPUs don't, so you cannot really upgrade that kind of information. To put it into layman's terms, more advanced CPUs get more advanced information types in terms of all kinds of stuff. But basically, if you've got a good CPU, then we can start to ramp up this emulator to match your kind of information that it can do. Because the biggest drawback, as we talked about with this emulator, is the bottlenecking of the CPU. So if we can allow it to give more advanced languages, shall we say, through it, then we're going to get less bottlenecks, but it gives us then forth more information. Now, there's more information, like I said, on the website that we talked about before, which is this. It goes into a hell of a lot more detail than what I'm going to go through in this. And if you are stuck about what kind of options to choose at this point, or the kind of implications that it has, please read this section. It's the bit that we brought up in the configuration guide 1.2.1. Yes, it's out of date, but this information is kind of still relevant. Okay, let's minimize out of here. Right, now I know that I am running on the stock one because I asked you to reset it before. So what I can do now is go into the plugin and BIOS. Come on. There we go. And I asked you to set this to SSE3. Looks like it's sorry, SSE2 before. What you can do now is look at the options that your board has got available to you, which is basically in most cases SSE2, and then you start getting more technical as you go up, and then we can start giving this more options as we go through. So what I'm going to do is check the AVX option, because that's the most advanced one at this point for me. X, why not A? But again, you know, trial and error. Try all these settings. If it doesn't work, try another one. If it works better or less, try again. You know, it's all trial and error with this emulator, because it's plug-in based. You don't know what kind of knock-on effect that's going to have with other settings that you've put into action already. That's why you're going to go through this in kind of a logical order. Okay, so I'm applying that, and I can click OK. Okay, so now I've given it that. Now what I can do is start ramping up the actual visuals within the game, because I've gone from native to 2 times at this moment in time, which is still kind of low for a today's standard PC. And again, because I'm on quite a large screen, I want to make the maximum of my visualizations while still keeping to the aesthetics of the actual PlayStation 2, because I don't like it when you put all the shaders on which make it look all cartoony. If anything, I'd rather make it look a little bit retro but still look not out of place on my big TV, if that makes any sense. So what we can do here then is, let's actually load a game. Let's load PCSX2 which is a snowboarding game, I believe. Let's boot it. Let's boot it! As you can see, speed's running optimum, frames per second optimum. All these settings have gone all the way down to almost 0, but that's because there's not much going on at this moment in time. Let's actually skip through all these settings. Again, don't forget the sound's off. The sound will be more than perfect during all this, but because it's off, you're not going to be hearing anything. There you go. So let's skip through all these. Start button. We'll get a race going, because then we can see what the visuals are really like during this, you know, menu system. I'm not really going to get that much of an impact when I start changing things. I need to get it in game so I can see what's going on, see how the game reacts, and see how it looks, so it looks good for me. Now I know that this game is actually quite problematic, especially if you're going into some of the settings. So again, it's got a knock-on effect with what I'm going to be changing around here. So let's actually start it going. So if I was to put this full screen, the graphics aren't actually that bad. They're not too bad at all. However, I could get more from this, and I want to get more because I'm greedy. So what I can do is ignore the gameplay. I just want it to run in the background. Go into config, go into video, and plugin settings. Okay, as you can see, it's kind of paused in the background there. However, what I want to do is go to... What can I put on here? Let's go for DirectX 3D11 like we were supposed to be on. Let's go for everything going good here. Let's turn this up, see if the system can handle 4 times native. Okay, so from the looks of it, I believe 4 times native is actually around 1080. So if I was to put this full screen, I should be getting 1080 graphics here. Judging by my maths, of course, which is not my strong point, by the way, guys. I'm absolutely terrible at this game also. Okay, so let's actually play around with some more settings. Let's see if we can make this drop. I've got no idea the performance of the CPU of this game, to be honest. Let's go for video plugins again, and let's see if we can Yeah, we'll go for that. We'll go for monstrosic filtering. This should now have quite an effect on the actual game itself. No, it's coping with it well. It's coping with this really well, to be honest. I'm impressed by the CPU. And impressed with this new build from PCSX2 as well. Let's pump it up even more, see what we can get out of this. Let's go 5 times native. Let's go 8 times anesthetic filtering. See what we can go for this. Jesus, it's still going. However, like I said, this isn't too bad in this games, but I could be losing frames per second loss in terms of actually rendering those frames to me. But to be honest, it's looking kind of smooth. I'm not noticing any kind of flickering or frame loss whatsoever. It's all quite smooth. So let's take this again to the next level. I'm quite excited for this, actually. Where's the menu gone? Config, video, plugin settings. Right, now let's go really in depth and take it to shaders. I want to enable FXAA. What else can I go for? Scanline and make it look old, but it looks terrible. Scanlines on the big TV like this. Let's go for it though. This may look terrible, but what the hell, eh? Let's see what we can do. Click OK. Let's click back into the game. Yeah, as you can see, the scan lines don't react to certain games very well, especially this one. Because the scan lines are so close together, it's reacting with all the artifacts and stuff that's being presented on the screen. So that was a bad option. However, in terms of performance, it's all over it. Let's push this up to the maximum. Let's see if this puppy can take it. Put that there. Config, video, plugin settings. Right, we're going to put this all the way up to 8 times native. I've got no idea what this is, by the way, guys. 8 times native. And I can't remember the actual settings to get it 4K, but I'm guessing the maximum there is going to be close to, if not 4K. So shader configuration, we're going to turn the filtering off. We're going to keep the FXAA on. What else have we got that we can put on? Let's whack this up to 16. Jesus, we're going high. And well, yeah, let's see what we can pump out here. Full screen this. As you can see, speed starting to drop now. I'm now in 4K. I'm running at 80-90% speed on this. But again, if I was to go in there and start tweaking, probably knock off my FXAA. Where have you gone? Video. Let's drop this down to 8. And that should give me back some speed. No, I'm closer, but I'm not there. Sorry guys, this is probably really boring now. I've actually got all kinds of programs running in the background also, which isn't helping. Video, plugin settings. Right, let's drop that down to 4. There's probably some hacks that I can mess around with, but no, we're not going to leave. We're going to leave them. There we go. We're back up to 100. So now, whoa, I'm now running at the maximum resolution in the presets. Of course, I can do my own resolution, but yeah, you cannot complain with that. That is not bad emulation whatsoever. Now, I couldn't do that. I know I couldn't do that with the other build of this PCSX2. It would start to crumble as soon as I start turning the resolution up. So hats off to the guys over at PCSX2 for actually evolving this into a 1.4.0 stable release. You have done really well. Okay then, just to finish off, that is the game emulated. That is everything now turned up to the maximum. That is more performance than what I was expecting. But I've now shown you, probably the long way around, but I've shown you in great detail how to squeeze the maximum out of this emulator. So hopefully those of you with more lower end PCs can get this to work, and those of you with more high end PCs can squeeze even more visualizations and performance out of this. So the next stage, what we can do is, let's go over to the website. Right. What we could do here is, what have we got? PCSX2 daily builds. Okay, so as we were looking at on the site before, we have got downloads, we've got GitHub. GitHub basically is the, let's call it the beta. You've got a stable release on there, and you will also have the release that people are actually working on, the bit that's being developed constantly. And GitHub brings it to you in a way which is basically, well, kind of like Code Talk, I presume you could put it. Now what you can do is actually download that version of the GitHub. And as you can see, it's brought to you here. Now this isn't always the best version, because at the end of the day, this is like a beta, or a beta, whatever you call it. I call it a beta, I suppose. Which is basically like a work in progress version. So of course the tweaks and the messing around that they may have done to make this build may not have been for the better, if that makes any sense. So make sure when you're looking at the changelog that you read the kind of notes that these guys are making. Some of them even admit that they've probably messed it up, but they're doing it as an experiment. So yes, it's probably good most of the time to actually download the latest version. I mean, look at the, even in a 24-hour basis, you've got what, several downloads for that in that one given day, and that's amazing, the kind of groundwork that they're doing. However, please note, a lot of the changes that they're making on this emulator isn't that drastic. You're probably going to have to give it a few days at least before you're going to get anything noticeable at all. And if anything, you know, they've got to squeeze little things. A lot of these changes are more admin rather than actual frames per second in. If that makes any sense. But yeah, have a look on there. Also, there's another version here which is basically the same thing as well. I'll give both of the links down below so you can bring it to yourself. And yeah guys, that is it. Basically all you'll get when you press download is either the full version of this emulator minus all the binary stuff that we talked about at the beginning, or you'll get certain files within there, and all you need to do is drag those files over onto your pre-existing build or install that you've got working. However, as always guys, when you're making any changes to your emulator and you've just spent, like we have, probably an hour configuring it, make a backup of it, or make a backup of it and then mess around with the backup itself so you're not messing anything up. So yeah, that's it guys, that is the PCSX2. It's the long way round. We've gone through a hell of a lot of information in there, especially just for one emulator. But what I've done is try and take you from the very beginning all the way to the end so you know everything about this. Yeah, thank you very much if you lasted this long, and I hope that your PS2 games are working without any hiccups whatsoever. Please inform me. I'm not going to apologize for long-winded tutorials, because I don't just teach you how to get things working, I teach you how they work. So yeah, if you want a 2-minute tutorial on how to get your games working, go somewhere else guys, you know. It's easy. But yeah, thank you for joining me, guys. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you do the things that people do on YouTube. But most of all, make sure you have a good day. Laters.